what is coffee? Do you know what coffee is? If you're with a crew, pause it and talk about it. See who knows what coffee really is, and then come right back. All right, so if you're back, coffee is a bean. No, it's not. Coffee's not a bean. It's a seed, right? It's actually the seed of a fruit. It's much like a cherry, a little coffee fruit that grows on a tree. These trees grow all around the world, mainly around the equator, and frequently in places of higher altitude. They are of the genus Coffea. It's a coffee tree. And there are two main species of Coffea. The two main species are Arabica and Canephora. If you've heard of Arabica, that would make sense. You'll see 100% Arabica or Arabica on a lot of different things. You'll see 100% Arabica on bags you buy at the grocery store or different coffee shops, especially the early 2000s, you'd see that on a lot of things. And you still see that today. Most cafes in the United States and in a large portion of the world use primarily Arabica, but some use Canephora. And if you've never heard of Canephora, the other word for that is Robusta or Robusta. Robusta was really big in the mid and later 1900s, but it's roughly twice as bitter and twice as caffeinated as Arabica. It doesn't taste as good, but it is easier to grow. So it really boomed, especially around and past World War II. But for the most part, most places have switched back to Arabica for its quality and its flavor. It still packs a punch in caffeine. You don't need much more than it gives, so it's the general go-to. But some instant coffees and other brands will still use Robusta. Sometimes brands that really promote that they have bold coffee also use Robusta. But otherwise, Arabica is the main one. That's what we use for all of our coffees here at Joe Brewski. We have experimented with some Robusta, and maybe we will down the road, but we primarily use Arabica. Beyond that, when you get past Arabica, there are different varieties of coffee, just like any other plant species. So with Arabica, this is where you get on certain bags, you'll see labels that say Bourbon, Typica, Geisha, different things like that. We could talk more about them. We're not going to dive into them in this course. But simply put, if you want to explore them, they're basically different breeds. They're different styles. They're different beans that are still coffee and still Arabica, but they're little variants. They're varietals, they're varieties, variances of coffee. And they have slightly different flavors, different things about them that make them special. And they're worth looking into. One in particular that got a lot of traction a number of years ago was Geisha, because all of a sudden there was this variety of Arabica that had all this flavor, and it changed many people's perspectives on, wait, it can still be Arabica, but still have different flavor based off of something even smaller than that. So that's the gist of it. That's what coffee is. Coffee gets to us through a long chain of command. Coffee is picked by farmers. Most of the coffee around the world is hand-picked, not picked in open fields like you might see corn or something else. It's typically grown on very hilly areas, mountainous areas. It's really hard to develop machinery that can even traverse those landscapes, much less pick beans when they're ripe, much less send those machines to every farm all around the world. There are millions of farmers around the world that are farming coffee. So the vast majority of coffee is hand-picked. That farmer or the person working the farm handpicks the bean after deciding which ones are ready and which ones are not. They're picking them when they're ripe. They're bringing to a facility where it is processed. I highly encourage you to look more into processing. We'll attach some material where you can dive a little bit deeper. But the majority of processes are either washed or natural. And what that simply means is how you get the seed, the pit of the fruit, out of the fruit. If it's washed, you are essentially washing the fruit off of the seed and taking the seed, and then you dry it. If it's natural, you're letting it sit in the sun or in some capacity in open air and letting the fruit essentially ferment off of the seed for a little bit of time before you pull that seed out of the fruit and dry it off. But either way, while each of them have different benefits, problems, pros, cons, each of them produces slightly different flavors. Those are two main ways of processing coffee. But there are a number of other ways to process coffee. Honey process is really popular, and there's a million new ways that people are experimenting. Some really popular ones right now are anaerobic processing, are heat processing, heat fermentation, and there's a number of other things that people are doing and experimenting with that are really fun and exciting and worth getting into. Most of the coffees we do at Joe are either washed or natural for now. But at the end of the day, just know that the process affects the flavor. And at the end of the day, you need to just try the coffee that you get and see what you think. Naturals tend to have really bright, vibrant flavors compared to a washed, which may be more tame, but also may be more stable in its flavor. So that's the real quick roundabout on processing. But essentially, coffee's processed. The seed is pulled out of the fruit. It's pulled out of the fruit, and then it's dried off, and then it's sorted, and then it's packed into a bunch of burlap bags. Those bags are brought to an exporter typically. Then they are shipped to whatever the location is. In our situation, an importer in the United States. Then we communicate with the importer ships it to us. We take those out of the bags, we roast those beans, we ship those beans to you, and that's where you come into the process. There's been 5 or 6 hands almost always that have touched the coffee beans before you, which is both really fun and really interesting that many people touch the coffee, work with the coffee, process it, grab it, pick it, plant it, all of the things. But also it means that there's a number of people before us to honor. There's a number of people to say, I'm not the only one touching this coffee. And so doing my diligence with this cup, not wasting beans that I don't have to, things like that are really valuable. People are genuinely spending their lives working on these beans. So it's something to consider and be thinking about. But at the end of the day, that's how that works. Coffee starts, it's planted in the ground, it's picked, the tree grows. Trees can go from shrubs to up to like 30 feet tall. Coffee trees are kind of interesting in that way. There's very big differences in how they can appear and look. They tend to grow around the equator. They grow all these fruit in their due season. They're picked, they're processed, they're sent here. We roast them, ship them to you, and then you brew them. That's essentially, in a real easy nutshell, seed to sip. If you want to learn more about seed to sip, we'll attach some material in our guide that will be coming with this course. And I just encourage you to explore it more. There is a massive world of learning about how the trade of coffee works, how fair trade, direct trade, all of these things work. And there's a whole environment to explore about how does coffee really get to me? But for the sake of this course and diving into how you control your coffee, that's the gist of what we're gonna talk about today. So let's go ahead and move on and begin to talk about the brewing experience.